Welcome to the Bells I Hear podcast. We will speak with experts who will debunk the myths and misconceptions surrounding homelessness and highlight the innovative approaches for addressing the issues, causes, and consequences of housing insecurity. I am Elisa Smith, your host, a mentor, professor of legal studies, and former public defender. Thanks for tuning in to the Bells I Hear. Welcome to the Bells I Hear. I'm Elisa Smith, the host, and today we are continuing a series exploring unique programs that provide support for people experiencing housing insecurity and homelessness. For this second episode of the series, we will talk about the DOE Fund, which provides support for New Yorkers experiencing homelessness. We are joined today by Jennifer Mitchell, the president and CEO of the DOE Fund, and Rahdel Sharbaan, a graduate of the DOE Fund's Ready, Willing, and Able program, the associate director of the Gates Avenue Transitional Residence, and a mentor and role model for participants. Our conversation will focus on the organization's nearly 40-year history, its growing portfolio of affordable and supportive housing residences, and how the DOE Fund transforms lives through housing and opportunities. Thank you for joining us today, Jennifer and Rahdel.
So glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great. And thank you both for being here to talk about the DOE Fund. And before we start getting into the nitty-gritty, I'd like to know more about the name. I feel like there's a story there.
There is a story there.
What is the DOE Fund?
So I'll start, but Rahdel, feel free to chime in. So our founders were George and Harriet McDonald, and the DOE Fund's history is that in the early 80s, when there was a homelessness crisis going on, George quit his job in the business world and started volunteering, handing out sandwiches in Grand Central Station. He did that for 2 years straight, and he really got to know a lot of the individuals who were sadly living in Grand Central Station. And one of those individuals was someone that everybody in Grand Central Station knew as Mama. Everyone called her Mama. And on Christmas Eve in 1985, George was there, and he was giving out, in addition to sandwiches, gifts, and he gave Mama a scarf. And later that evening, the transit police kicked homeless individuals out of Grand Central Station, including Mama, and she was found frozen to death on Christmas morning. And so nobody knew her real name. And so on her death certificate, it was Mama Doe. And so George and Harriet founded the DOE Fund in honor of Mama and all the other unidentified individuals who live and sadly sometimes die on the streets of New York City. And so that is the inspiration for the name. It's nearly 40 years ago that the DOE Fund got started, and it's been a really meaningful and impactful trajectory that was inspired by Mama's death. Yeah. And we celebrate Mama's memory every single year in December to honor her and her memory and all the other unidentified individuals who live and die on the streets.
What an origin story. That's and inspirational. I mean, sad, tragic, inspirational. And I wish we could sit here today and say New York is in such a much better place when it comes to housing insecurity and homelessness, but we're not.
I wish we could say that too.
I wish we could. It's still a significant concern. So how you've been to, the DOE Fund has been around for 40 years. How is the DOE Fund supporting New Yorkers who are struggling?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it and give kind of the big overview, and then Rahdel, maybe you can talk more in depth about Ready, Willing, and Able specifically. Sure. So the DOE Fund as an organization has grown tremendously from, the days of handing out sandwiches in Grand Central Station. At this point, we currently operate 3 transitional residences. We operate them in partnership with New York City Department of Homeless Services. We have 660 shelter beds for single men who are homeless in New York City. We are in the next month or so opening one new additional transitional residence for 200 additional people. So we will have about 860 beds for single homeless men in the New York City shelter system. On the other side of our portfolio, we have been developing affordable and supportive housing over the years, and at this point have 12 residences, beautiful, beautiful, 24-hour security, amenities. I always say I would love to live in any one of them. Great views, great locations, and they are and across those, there's about 1,300 units, and about half of them are just affordable units that are accessed by people using the New York City Connect lottery program, and the other half are supportive housing units for individuals that have some physical or mental health challenges and they get referred to us by city or state agencies. And so that's kind of the big dope on overview. And then what we're most well known for, our signature program is Ready, Willing, and Able. And I will turn it over to Rahdel to just talk a little bit about Ready, Willing, and Able, which is definitely the most visible part of our work.
Yeah. And Rahdel, you're a graduate of
Yes.
that program. So I definitely want to hear that story and all the good work that it does. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. Yes, I am. I'm a graduate of Ready, Willing, and Able program. We're basically a transitional work program. Also, we help the gentlemen that come into our facilities. One of our 3 facilities, the one I work at is Gates Avenue. We they come in, they get screened. Um, there is part of the screening process is kind of like an interview, but we pretty much, if you're ready, willing, and able, and we try to take in is
We
we'll
screen
work with
in,
them.
not screen out.
Yeah, we screen in, not screen out. Yeah, we meet people where they're at. Okay, so they come in, we screen them. They fill out an application process, make sure they have IDs. If they don't have the IDs, we try to help them attain IDs. There's an orientation process where we have workshops where we work on just like soft skills, like coming to work on time, talk a little bit about hygiene, stuff like that. And then
Relapse prevention is another
relapse
one of them.
prevention, that's
Conflict
very important.
resolution.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very important.
Are these individuals living in the housing, or are they living outside the house? They're living in the housing?
Yeah,
Yes,
for the most
yes.
Yeah.
part, everybody that participates in Ready, Willing, and Able lives with us. We do have some small pilots of folks that aren't, and actually, I could talk about it now or later. But we have started adapting the Ready, Willing, and Able program for the folks living in our supportive and affordable housing. So if there's folks living there that either are unemployed or have never been employed because they didn't think they were physically or mentally able to work, but we want to break that paradigm and show them that there is opportunity and they can do it. So we're working on that. But just to finish the RWA kind of thing, it is a 9 to 18-month program. And so Rahdel was talking about that first phase, the orientation phase, where people are taking classes, getting nutritious, delicious food in safe shelters that it's very different than kind of the stereotypical shelter that I think people imagine. And so people are really like getting to a place where they're feeling safe, they're getting nutrition, they're taking classes, and then they start taking part in our paid transitional work training program. And they're assigned a community improvement program route. And so they're given a beautiful bright blue uniform, and they're going to work. And through that work, they are learning. There's many teachable moments. People get first and second and third and fourth and fifth chances because they're learning sometimes for the first time how to take direction, how to get along with difficult colleagues or difficult supervisors, how to take a deep breath and not be reactive if how how to interact with the public. Often I often think about it. Folks that are participating in our program are interacting with the public in ways where the public is deeply appreciative of the work. They get thanked, they get high-fived, all of that. While, just weeks or months earlier, they could have been somebody was stepping across the street to get away from because they weren't presenting themselves in a way that made somebody want to ask them for help.
Right, right. It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like this is almost like a housing first model where people are getting access to shelter and safety and
Right.
support, and then you're
Structure.
scaffolding all the different programs so that they're almost ready for
Yes.
Yeah,
learning.
I wouldn't call it a housing first model because it's transitional
Oh,
residents. The folks that are participating are living in a shelter. And so we are helping them get back to basics and kind of get used to and develop the skills so they can live independently and be, working and earning money and using it to pay for rent. But when they're participating with us, they're living in transitional residences.
and Rahdel, I do want to hear about your experience and how long, how long are people in the Ready, Willing, and Able program? Like, how long does it take to graduate? Because I know you're a graduate.
Yes. Well, the criteria to graduate is obtain employment, which is what we help them do, and housing, which is another piece of what we help them do. So once they have those two components, they're eligible graduates. And
And so
then we also go ahead.
how long
First.
does it take on average for people to begin and to complete to be self-sufficient, I guess?
Well, I mean, it really depends on the individual.
Yeah.
Because a lot of our participants, they struggle with substance use and stuff like that. So sometimes it might take a few times, but as long as they're making progress, we progress with them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Very
on
supportive.
average, folks are usually with us from anywhere from like 9 to 18 months.
Right.
Okay. So, and it's very individualized.
Yes. Yeah. We
So
work with.
Rahdel, can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Well, I came into the program in 2016. Um, first off, I mean, my father, who is also a graduate, he
His father was one of the original
yes,
pioneers who built Ready, Willing, and Able
right,
with George and Harriet because they met him in the very early days.
yes,
Wow.
yeah. So I met my father as a teenager. He wasn't in a very good place at the time. And then I seen him like maybe 3 years after I met him, and he was already got into the program. He was clean, married, had his life stable and everything. So we developed a relationship through the years after that. But I had my own struggles, and um I was in and out of jail, and I ended up in prison for a little while. And when I was coming out of prison, he was like, hey, you know, you should come into the program. I think it'll be a good fit for you. So I was a little hesitant at first, but then, through time I was like, hey, why not? And I excelled. I developed a interest in social services when as a trainee, and when I got hired as a supervisor, in our CIP career improvement program. I got hired as a supervisor. I developed an interest in social services and went on to school. Got a lot of support from a lot of staff within.
Got his bachelor's in
Got my
social work.
bachelor's. Yeah, I started off
Congratulations.
with an
Amazing.
associate's degree in human services, bachelor's in social work, and just a motivation to pay it forward.
Yeah. And
And I'm
and
not
that's
gonna
what you're
lie.
doing, right? You're
Yes,
working.
absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
and I try to be relatable in my job. Look, I walk this walk just like you did. Um, I'm here to help
Yeah.
if you let us. and I try to meet every individual where they're at, and most of the time success. Most of the time success. I just try to stay grounded and be as relatable as possible because
Yeah.
I understand a lot of the struggle, you know.
So it's like that mentorship component of your job
Yes.
is critical for
Yes.
people's success. And I think I read somewhere that I think something like 70% of the
Yeah.
graduates are then working for the DOE Fund. Is that
No, no, not
no?
70%. No, that would
I was
be,
gonna say,
we
that's a
have,
lot.
yeah, we have over 15,000 people over
Oh
our
yeah.
history who we've helped get jobs or get housing, and more often both. The 70% number is that 70% of our staff are
Ah,
people who are graduates of the program. So that's, and it's 70% of our program staff are graduates of the program. And so that, yeah, it would be thousands if it was 70% of the overall thing.
right.
But that is something that is really unique and special about it. When somebody walks into one of our residences, they are greeted. The first person that greets them probably is a security guard. I think throughout our 16 buildings, we have about 100 security guards. All of them are graduates of the Ready, Willing, and Able program. So the first person greeting them is somebody who's saying, I was once in your shoes and look at me now. Then, they go in and they're meeting with their assistant director or their director, their community improvement program supervisor. And all these folks are either graduates or if they are not, they often have lived experience. So they're credible messengers. And so it's just really powerful. And I think it's hard when you have experienced homelessness, when you've experienced incarceration, when you've experienced addiction. It's hard to trust, and you've always been a number in a system. And so, when Rahdel was just talking about, I meet each person where they're at. I think that's like incredibly powerful, and I think it builds trust. And so I think that is one of the secret. I think the DOE Fund is a magical place, and I think that component of it is one of the ingredients in our secret sauce.
Yes.
And
And
if
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry,
Yes,
and
Rodell.
if I could piggyback a little bit, that trust is very important because a lot of us coming, to have to deal with these systems, we feel like it's the whole world against us. You know what I mean? So to come into an organization like this and be able to relate to somebody that's been through some of the things you've been through, it it it, it helps. It helps tremendously.
Yeah,
So
I
I
mean
just try to pay that forward.
right, and to not feel judged, to
Yes.
feel like people really understand
Yes.
the struggle, and to provide the support. In my prior life, I was a public defender, and
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
so was my dad.
yeah, and I think one of the saddest things that of the many sad things, I think one of the saddest things is when people do get released from custody, there's no support mechanisms in place. There's no help. There's no it's just kind of like they drop you off and go,
Hmm.
good luck,
Hmm.
which is incredibly short-sighted um, in terms of people's success in reducing recidivism and all of those. And it sounds like the DOE Fund really does capture um, that support. And I do want to talk about how the DOE Fund is doing things differently in terms of its services than maybe some other organizations.
We're happy to talk about that. The one thing I just wanted to add to what you
Yeah.
were saying, Elisa, is about 50% of the folks that we serve through Ready, Willing, and Able have histories of incarceration. So what you just talked about is very real. Like, people are released, they're dropped off, maybe they're given a Metro card and money for a meal, and so they often end up in the shelter system, and some of them end up in the Ready, Willing, and Able program. And I'm just told very often from those folks that, like, if not for Ready, Willing, and Able, they don't know that opportunity, that hand up rather than hand out, really made a difference at a very critical moment in their lives where like they could have gone and done something that would have caused them to violate parole or probation or something because they're put in a pretty desperate situation immediately upon release. I mean, the whole system needs to be taken a look at. And then just from talking about Ready, Willing, and Able and the differences, I think that we're a very comprehensive program. So we recognize like in order to get a job and to get housing, there's many other things in your life that need to be working. And so we're very intentional about thinking through how somebody during their time with us gets all those pieces together. So while, digital literacy, we have a computer essentials class that people take right off. And that's because in 2026, you really, it's hard to get a job. It's hard to get housing. It's hard to connect with your children. It's hard to build relationships. It's hard to get a bank account, anything if you are not at least somewhat digitally literate. So
and everything is changing so fast. Things change so quickly.
Yeah.
So people need that support.
Yeah. So the comprehensive nature, the real intentionality between everything. I think Rahdel said it earlier, like how he's meeting people and like meeting them where they're at. And so that's what all our staff are doing, right? And so they're saying, okay, does this person need help with their ID? Do they need help with their arrears? Do they need help with debt they accumulated when they were in prison and couldn't fix it? Do they need help establishing better ID or ID that will be accepted? So just from like day one, it's like really making sure we're thinking through everything. And so we have a strong framework, but then we have a lot of individual services as well.
Can you share with us, Rahdel, maybe you can share with us some other success stories? Because I just think success stories are so impactful in describing, kind of putting a face to what you've just described. Like tell, one, two, I'm sure you have many. So choose one that you think would resonate.
Well, one individual comes to mind. He was an individual that came into our facility. He was struggling with alcohol. I mean, for years, for most of his adult life. Always worked. He was like a functional alcoholic, but he always worked or had a job and everything. But his main issue was keeping a job because staying sober. So once he figured out he figured out in time, how to stay sober, what he needed. So when he came in, he was very focused on his sobriety to the point where if certain things were in place, he became anxious. So we helped him through that. And he went through the program, flying colors, came to work every day, stayed clean, eventually found employment, moved out, and he comes back to visit us so often. And those are the situations that motivate me to come to work every day, even when I don't feel, when I'm, because I'm not gonna lie to you, that sometimes this gets overwhelming sometimes, and you gotta take a breath. But when I see individuals like the gentleman I just mentioned, he just, hey, I gotta keep going. I gotta keep going. So, and then I've had other instances where guys come in angry. And I used to be one of those too, an angry guy, and so help them regulate some of those emotions, and being relatable, that's where that comes in, being relatable. Hey, listen, I was just like that. Hey, maybe we could try this, and this. And there's another graduate working, connecting with his family. And yeah.
Rahdel just mentioned the word graduate. And what's pretty cool is that every year we do a huge graduation ceremony. And so everybody that has come through the Ready, Willing, and Able program that year and has secured employment and secured housing, is called a graduate, and we have a big graduation ceremony, and it's really inspiring. And so you hear about when people get up and tell their stories and share their own stories. And so that's a really powerful moment. And for some of them, if they hadn't finished high school or anything like that, this could be the first graduation ceremony they're participating in. And that is meaningful in and of itself. And then we also every year do an alumni barbecue where people who graduated dating back to the 90s come back and celebrate, and they bring their kids and they bring their family members and their loved ones, and the pride that they have about, like, what has happened over the past decade or 20 years or whatever, and how they're still doing. And just the hugs and I think because 70% of our program team are graduates, we have really, people stick with the DOE Fund. Like we have, I spent 12 years here in the early 2000s, and I've been back for 3 years. Rahdel has been here since 2016. Is that right, Rahdel? 2016.
Yes.
And like, we're babies. Like there's people that are like, how long have you been here? 29 years, 30 years, 31 years. And so when the graduates come back and see folks, it's like these connections are really deep and go back a long way.
You're building relationships.
Yeah.
These are and lifelong relationships. And I was thinking Rahdel, when you were talking about, how it could be overwhelming to go to work because you are working with individuals who are, confronting barriers and
Yes.
struggling, and with your lived experience, it kind of can bring that back. But then you also at the same time have all this support system around you
Yes.
of
Yes.
all these people that you work with who have this,
Yes.
and that's powerful.
Yeah, one of the things I'm extremely proud of that we just recently launched is a leadership development initiative. So everybody on our staff that is director, VP, SVP level is going to be part of this 3-year, pretty intense leadership development initiative, because so many of the folks who work at the DOE Fund, they have lived experience. They've come through the Ready, Willing, and Able program, but they haven't necessarily had formal leadership training. And I joke, and I included in this that, we're not getting any younger. And so we need to make sure that we are institutionalizing the beauty and the best practices in the DOE Fund and in Ready, Willing, and Able, because as people start to retire and think about that, we want to make sure that like this true like family and sense of building trust and legacy building stays intact. We're a large organization that feels a little bit small because people do connect in a really deep ways.
Yeah. I just think that's and how amazing for the people who come back for the alumni event to bring their children, to have their children see all of this good work and support that their families have, and
Yeah. And community, the sense of community is
community.
palpable.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, one of the things we try to do on this podcast is we try to clear up myths or misconceptions about housing insecurity, homelessness, those types of issues that we're addressing. Could each of you give me an example of a misconception about homelessness or even support services for homeless individuals that you have run into?
I think people tend to paint homelessness with one stroke, like one dimensional, and whatever that is, but it's usually a negative stereotype. And I've been working with homeless individuals for my entire career, so since 2000, so over 25 years, and there is not one brush to paint folks with. Someone becoming unhoused is such a complex issue, and there's so many different reasons. So obviously, like lack of employment. There's a statistic that says like the majority of people living in New York City are like one paycheck away from being homeless, and one $400 emergency could make it could cause an individual to enter the homeless service system. And so I think that just like understanding like homelessness has a multitude of causes, and also like it's different kinds of people and different situations. And so I think the importance of getting proximate, and getting to know people, and really breaking down those kind of stereotypes and broad stroking is important.
Yeah. Rahdel, do you have a myth that you want to demystify that you've run into?
Well, where do I
Probably
start?
so many, right?
Not everybody that's in the homeless in the shelter system is a criminal. You know, um,
Hmm.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of people just down on their luck, and not everybody in the shelter system is a has issues with substance use. You know, so you
Right. I
as an
absolutely. Yeah.
individual who has some life experience of being perceived as something that I'm not.
Mhm.
I just into every situation with the open mind.
Yeah. I mean, I
And
used to say when
uh,
I did the public defense work, um, there were actually very few criminals that I represented, like real criminals that I think were unredeemable people. Most of them probably were sociopathic. I mean, very, very few.
right.
And I think that we should not judge people by maybe their worst day,
For
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
We
right?
Felipe Vargas, who's our senior VP of programming, has a saying. He always says that people shouldn't be defined by their worst moment, like
Yeah.
that, and it always just lands in a really powerful way with me.
Yeah.
The other misconception I just think, and it goes along with kind of what Rahdel and I are both saying, is like I think people believe like homelessness is like intractable, like there's not like solutions to it. And I think the DOE Fund, and many other organizations, over the past several decades, has really proven there are solutions. And is there a one size fit all solution? No. But if you have a continuum of care that offers different solutions, and then you have a system that matches people with the solution that works for them, I do think like homelessness is solvable. Not
Yeah.
necessarily tomorrow, but I think it's very, very solvable. And I think all the people that we've served and seen secure employment and housing just is, thousands of individual stories that evidence that the cycles of homelessness can be broken.
Right. Your
Yeah.
success story prove that, right?
Yes,
So
exactly.
let's pivot to the future.
Sure.
I know you have a new building coming. You mentioned it earlier and I had seen that on the news. And you also probably have some other initiatives. I'd love to hear about what the future holds for the DOE Fund.
Sure. So the new shelter that is coming on line in the next month or so is literally right next door to where Rahdel works every single day in Bedford Stuyvesant, and it's going to be beautiful. Beautiful. He's had to deal with the noise of the construction for the past several years, but it's going to be beautiful, and we're really excited about that. We also have about four buildings in various stages of pre-development and construction for permanent supportive and affordable housing. So, we'll have 200 new transitional housing beds, shelter beds, and then we'll also have about in the next few years 800 more affordable and supportive housing units. So we're really excited about all of
Right.
that because that's important, and it's important for the DOE Fund, but more importantly, it's an important part of New York City's solution around the affordability crisis and the affordable housing crisis. So really, really proud of all of that. And then, similar to how when George founded the DOE Fund. George and Harriet founded the DOE Fund back in the 80s. And people were saying to him when he gave out the sandwich, they would say, thanks for the sandwich, but what I'd really like is a room and a job to pay for it. We are now bringing that, we're hearing similar things from our supportive and affordable housing tenants saying, hey, like I love that I have housing, but what I really want is also to, do something productive. And so we're bringing aspects of our ready, willing, and able model that are transferable to our supportive and affordable housing. And that is in the very early stages. We're piloting it, but we are seeing, little glimmers of success even in these early days. And we're very excited about that.
Yeah. I love that you are, you're continuing to evolve. You
Yeah.
you're doing it through talking to the people that are being served to see what their needs are.
Every single thing since day one that the DOE Fund has built has been elevating the voices of the people who are served and have the potential to benefit by it. And so I think that is part of when we talked about before, 70% of our program team are graduates of the Ready, Willing, and Able program. Those voices are at all levels and in all departments in the organization. And I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. And so, Rahdel, I'm going to have you give the last word. If there are people listening to this podcast who either need help or would like to volunteer to give help, where would they go? What would you tell them? Where should they start? How do they find the DOE Fund? And what could they? How do they start to get help? And for people who want help, where do they go to get it or to give it?
Wow.
That's why it was the last word. It's an important one.
Yeah, very important. Well, you could definitely find us downtown Brooklyn. And start talk to one of our guys, talk to one of our men in blue when you see them in the New York City streets, or you could reach us at doe.org. We have different links there with the careers. If you want a career, you want to volunteer, doe.org. Come see me at Gates Avenue, 520 Gates Avenue. Come see me.
And what kind of things would volunteers do if they knocked on Gates Avenue and said, "Hey, Rahdel, I want to help." What kinds of help could they give? How could they help?
How could they help? I don't know, Jennifer. You want to take that one?
I'm happy to. We do mock interviews, so we get as people get ready for their real job interviews. We have volunteers come in on a monthly basis to all our facilities and do mock interviews. So that's a really great way to help. We have some gardening programs in our supportive housing that are always looking for volunteers. So we're happy to take help that way. We have we also have people participate in our resume clinics and help people prepare their resumes. So lots of ways to kind of get in and be on the ground and be helping. We also, we have somebody right now in one of our facilities that's doing writing workshops. We've had movie producers and motivational speakers come in and, do question and answers with folks. So we love to take people's talents and then find ways for them to offer that talent to the folks in our programming. So that's really valuable. And you can, as Rahdel said before, doe.org. You can reach out to any of us or information lines, and we pride ourselves on being responsive.
Yes. And if anybody needs help or hears this and says, "I think DOE Fund could really help me," I love that they can walk up to somebody who's wearing the blue, that you are that accessible and open.
Yeah, they're our best ambassadors.
Yeah, because believe it or not, we get a lot of referrals that way.
Yeah.
The men, the men on the ground, the men actually doing the work, working on themselves.
Yeah.
So they're definitely one of our ambassadors.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much for the conversation. I really enjoyed learning about all the good work that the DOE Fund is doing. Jennifer and Rahdel, it's been great having you on the Bells I Hear.
Thanks for
Yes.
having us on. Happy to be back at any other point if appropriate.
Well,
Pleasure.
Thank you. And I probably will have you back because it sounds like you're constantly growing and doing new things. So I look forward to hearing more. So have a
Awesome.
good day.
Thank
You
you.
too.
You too.
Thank you for tuning in to the Bells I Hear podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the Bells I Hear and follow us on social media. We post all of our conversations on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. You can connect with us on Instagram and post comments or questions that we can address on upcoming shows. More information can also be found on Blogger and Substack. So many ways to learn about the issues surrounding housing insecurity. Please join us and contribute to the conversation.